Hey everybody, welcome to Low Friction Friday. Hope you've had a great week. And yeah, today I'm just going to be doing one, literally off the cuff today, having a look at how Cycling Media are going with their best lubricant choice articles. So first one I'm going to have a look at is I saw a fairly detailed one by Cycling Weekly. So it'll be very interesting just to see how they're assessing their lubricants and making recommendations to the cyclists of the world. But yeah, with mini-me on school holidays, so in the lead up to my own Xmas break and post, my ability to prep for a video is going to be, I think, very limited. And so fun stuff like this that I can just do off the cuff will be, I think, the go for a little bit until we can delve into, again, some sort of deeper topics when we're back up and running fully next year. And getting back into some detail reviews and testing updates and so on. Just some super quick fun updates though before. You can see the freshly built and completed Super Commuter. So that was partly done last week. I managed to get that finished off over the weekend and first use on the Wednesday. And yeah, that was great. So I'd done a couple of hours solid mountain bike ride during the day. Half-hour cruise into town that evening. Absolutely smashed that night for hour and a half kickboxing session, and the crawl back home up the hill on the old mountain bike would have really been a slog, but that was just so much more pleasurable to get back home. So that was just fantastic and a bunch of fun to rebuild, frame and spare parts that I had lying around after that bike had been skittled and no longer my time trial bike. So yeah, always a bunch of fun if you get to put some stuff that you have around to good functional use without having to go out and buy a new bike. There are times when it's obviously a lot of fun to buy a new bike, and times when it's great to get stuff that you have around the home back up and having a good life again. So that will take the number of bikes that I actually for real regularly use in either racing, training, or now commuting to 8. So I think that's a good number. 8's actually my favorite number, so I think that's probably the right number of bikes for me to have in actual active use. So yeehaw. And last quick one from last week. Apologies on me screwing up the which way around the viscosity things are. I have a mental retardation on that front. I always get it wrong. I seem to have imprinted it the wrong way around a long time ago, and then too many knocks to the head later, it appears that is not changing. So yeah, apologies for that. I hopefully got some text on screen on last week's vid to show that as a correction. But yeah, I am. Let's just say I'm a fairly balanced person. I can do anytime I do something that is remotely clever, I will start to get very worried because I am shortly going to offset that with something rather retarded and stupid. So you will have seen, if you've been watching my videos for a while, I have my moments, and that was another one. All right, that'll do. Let's get into having a look at the Cycling Weekly Best Lubes for 2024. Alrighty, before we have a look at their recommendations, probably best we understand how they have tested to arrive at those recommendations. All of the chain lubes featured have been tested in the real world. This means that the tester has used the products across a range of conditions to assess their performance, taking into consideration the different demands placed on individual types of lubricants. We take note of a range of factors from ease of application, longevity, and cost, alongside noise or any appearance of rust or damage. All of the lubes featured have been applied to a chain cleaned in an ultrasonic bath. As part of the testing, our reviewer also performed a test designed to best simulate riding in the rain in an attempt to eliminate variables. After applying the lubes, the reviewer soaked the chain with water from a garden hose and left it for 30 minutes before riding. This riding was then done on a repeatable route, including steep climbs and plenty of gear shifting to determine the smoothest and quietest performer. Right, now I don't want this to sound like I'm being harsh against that, approach for Cycling Weekly, because all cycling media, frankly, it is such a tough time for any tech writer or journalist or even group of people assigned at a publication to try to assess bicycle chain lubricants. It's just, where do you really begin with trying to objectively assess them and also do so in a manner that is repeatable and actually going to delineate something to you and the audience about one lubricant's performance versus another. From a technical perspective, there's obviously there's a lot of holes in that approach. To be fair, it's also far from the worst that we've seen from media publications reviewing chain lubricants or best lubricant articles. So there's that going for them, and the fact they've published how we test means that we can actually have a bit of a talk about it, which is great. Before I do that, though, I'll also state that I'm not familiar enough with Cycling Weekly to know if they have been in the past or are still currently influenced by if a particular brand or manufacturer advertises with them a lot, and a lot of publications need the advertising money to survive. If that in any way influences their sort of product reviews for that particular brand, without knowing, unless there's some sort of compelling evidence that people can share to me otherwise, I'm going to assume that Cycling Weekly and the journalists involved have outstanding integrity, and that even if manufacturers are big advertisers with them, that it's not influencing their product recommendations, just for the purposes of this article. Now, unfortunately, it was for me, I know, we know what I'm like, it was far too brief an insight, because there's a lot of, I think, really important detail about the testing that we don't know. So the first one off the bat is, how long is each lubricant being tested? So it sounds like, sure, they're applying them and they're spraying some garden hose water on, and then they are going riding on what sounds like it's dry road conditions. So, yeah, is he riding each lubricant for 200 kilometers or 300 kilometers? So how many repeats of this course is this journalist doing per lubricant, and how many total kilometers does that add up to? I think there's about 9 or 10 lubricants that that he's reviewed. So, if he was doing, say, 300 kilometers per lubricant, that's 3,000 kilometers of riding this particular road or tough road loop. That's a fair bit of work and time for one person to get through. But even for all that work and time, at the end of the day, 300 kilometers is not a very big assessment for how a lubricant is going. You can put just about practically anything that is, I guess, a lubricant on your bicycle chain, and in just, say, 300 kilometers of dry conditions road cycling, you're not going to pick up a lot of issues on the really the huge majority of stuff that's out there. There are some products that will give out by then. There are some that we've seen over testing that have an extremely short treatment lifespan, but most will not have any issues. And I know that for probably really 90% of stuff that's out there, if I was just to prep a chain, put them on there and ride 300 kilometers of dry road conditions, even if I've garden hosed it once for 30 minutes, and left it for 30 minutes before a ride one time, I'm not going to be able to tell you much about that lubricant. It is just going to look and feel like a lubricant. So without having any sort of contamination involved or actual wet riding conditions involved, without testing them for, say, at least 1,000 kilometers with some chain wear checking, because definitely over 1,000 kilometers of real-world riding conditions with an accurate chain wear checking process, you will be able to pick up a wear rate difference between high-performing products versus medium versus low. And I'm sort of surprised still that that is not something that has been really picked up by some cycling media who are taking the time to do these types of articles. That they can't do outright efficiency, obviously, but chain wear is still going to be a nice, easy one to just pick up and see, because obviously they're going to wonder if on the same X amount of riding on the same course and same conditions, if they've got some notable wear for one product and an absence of wear for another, it's going to give them some fairly important information. I also believe that in this day and age, they really should have some solid gravel loop or gravel riding in that mix as well. It's not difficult to have a chain that you can use across, on a road bike that you're using for testing, and also a gravel bike that you're going to use for testing, because especially with wet lubricants, a lot of wet lubricants that are a perfectly good choice or even excellent choice for road riding, especially dry conditions road riding, because of the fact that they're a wet lubricant, become an abrasive nightmare if you're using them off-road out in the world of dirt and dust. And if it's pretty much to sort of put across as a best chain lube or a top chain lube recommendation, and it's only been tested in road conditions, and then somebody takes that product off-road, they may have a really expensive time at the end of that. And I am certain that the reason why publications like Cycling Weekly are putting all this effort in is because they genuinely want to put out great information to their readers and to their audience. And they would not want somebody following their advice and having a bad time because of following that advice. So I think that's another easy improvement for publications to make if they're going through all this time and effort to do this testing and these articles, just to take, I guess, a couple of little extra steps as well and really make it something. But again, aside from the fact that, even without doing some objective assessment like accurate chain wear checking, if they were to throw in a few hundred kilometers of off-road as well, they will definitely see some changes with the number of wet lubricants and start to ring some alarm bells that they wouldn't have seen in that time on the road. So it's really just I think a must. If you're going to assess lubricants and you don't know who they are going to go to, unless you are going to specify this test is really only relevant for those who are going to ride on road, then they really should be broadening their testing out in the field. And last bit, not to be too much of a harpy, but garden hose onto the bike. I don't know how much, obviously, water they've put through the chain doing that, so how long was the garden hosing. But garden hose water, it's going to be pretty clean, so you're not going to get the same level of potential rust catalyst than you get from water that's coming off your actual ride, which is going to generally have a whole bunch of minerals in it, and they can act much more as a rust catalyst. Also, it's different if the chain is static. So a chain with the links and all the parts, when they're not articulating or moving, when they're being hit with water, it's different than when they are, because a whole bunch of things are happening with the actual lubricant working in the chain and parts moving when the water's running through versus if they're just sitting there. So it's not nothing. It's I guess better than potentially not. However, as an assessment as to whether a lubricant is going to hang on and last in wet weather conditions, some garden hose while the chain is static really, unfortunately, is not going to assess that very well. Camera on. I've got a bit in this article. Okay, best overall, they have Smooth, which is, perfectly good choice. So, reasons to buy: very long lasting in extreme conditions, promote a quiet drivetrain, doesn't attract dirt, needs extra chain prep before applying. Developed to be used in the Absa Cape Epic mountain bike stage race that runs in South Africa, a race that is notoriously hard on drivetrain and suspension components. Smooth proved to be so long lasting that it was dripped onto the chains of the majority of the top 10 teams the year it was launched. It takes a little bit of chain prep before first application, but when done correctly, the wax-based lube will last for an extraordinary number of miles. During testing, we found that the extra effort required in the application stage paid dividends when it was time to ride. After 150 miles in varied conditions, including some rain, the chain still ran smoothly and was noise-free. This means that despite Smooth Lube's higher price tag, it still represents decent value for money due to the longevity of each application. Okay, for this first one, a lot of agreement on that. Yes, Smooth is overall great for a lot of people. I actually class this one as a more economic choice. They're classing it as expensive, but it's like $25 Australian still for, I think it's 120 mil. And because it's so long lasting per treatment in general, a bottle is going to last most people about a year. So if you're going through a bottle of Smooth faster than a year, you're clocking up some miles. So overall, I list this one as a more economical and a good economical choice. There is some initial penetration issue sort of faff to get past, which you can do. Just follow the advanced application technique, which we have on the instructions tab on the ZFC website. The main fun that can come with Smooth is that, so like if you're riding dry road conditions, dry off-road conditions in general, brilliant. It does also perform most excellent in harsh, wet conditions, road or off-road. The fun though becomes if you're doing that frequently. So remember that if you ride off-road or road so riding in wet conditions, sorry, Friday afternoon fades here. Water's going to bring all the crap right through your chain. Whatever crap it brings in, it is going to be pressed into your set wax lubricant deep inside the chain, and it is not going anywhere then unless you remove it. So unless you reset your chain post-wet ride, and this is true for all lubricants, all chains, your next rides in the sun are still going to be quite high friction, high wear because of the abrasive contamination that's now in your lubricant. You don't want that crap in your lubricant. You wouldn't want it in your bearings. You really don't want it in your chain. So simply resetting a Smooth chain is just more work because it is a really tough clean. Most solvents don't work. You can't just melt it off with boiling water like the refined wax strips of, say, Silka SS Strip, True Tension, Ceramic Speed, UFO, things like that. Smooth Prep works really well, but it's really expensive. So if you're riding frequently in wet conditions, just, consider that whilst it's excellent during that time, if it's been sort of, cleaned, prepped and re-lubed, it's going to outlast a lot of other products in those conditions and do a great job, but your reset after each time you ride in the wet is going to be a fair bit more of a pain than a number of other options. So it's what's the right lube for your riding and your maintenance preferences. But yeah, aside from that, it's an overall, I think for Smooth, for the price of it, it's hard to do better for $25 for a bottle that's going to last most people a year, maybe two. One last note, and this is applicable to Smooth and really all wax strips and to a large extent also wet drips. Where people get into an issue with, say, Smooth and Squirt, which is also generally fairly long-lasting, is applying too much, too often. Over-application of a lubricant is not as bad as really under-application, where under-application you can find yourself without sufficient lube obviously work inside your chain, and you can then have metal on metal and find yourself with a 15-watt lost chain, and 10 watts of that are going directly into wearing out your chain and group set. So over-lubing, though, can also be an issue. You want to get to know when your chain just starts to sound and feel that little bit dry. That is pretty much, around the perfect time to re-lube your chain. And if anything, you bring it back from that. If you find that your chain is starting to sound and feel dry for you after about, say, 10 hours of riding on average, then you would look to re-lube at about 8. If you've got a long-lasting lubricant like Smooth and you're reapplying it well before it needs to be reapplied, and you keep doing that and you're putting a fair bit on, this is where especially your wax strips will just be way overdone, and you get all this excess build-up of wax. And again, pretty much every molecule of Smooth that you apply isn't going anywhere. You'll have a really gunked up chain that's a really hard clean. And this can be, same for a number of other wax strips. With wet lubes, if you over-apply, you just obviously get a black mess. And the wetter it is, the more contamination it's going to attract, and the easier time it has pumping that contamination from outside to inside. Short version of my, Friday fade rambling there is get to know the lifespan of your lubricant choice and your own riding, and try to learn when is the right time to apply it so that you don't underlube or overlube, because both cause issues. And you will have a ton of fun if you overlube Smooth. The next one, I'll try to keep some of the other educational bits on each one not too long, or this will be 48 hours long. Best all round, Fenwick's All Conditions Chain Lube. I have not tested, seen or heard much about this one. So if you have used it yourself, let us know how you found it. They say it works well in both wet and dry conditions, doesn't collect too much dirt, easy to clean off, good value, biodegradable. Reasons to avoid might be slightly less long lasting than a thicker lube in bad weather. Fenwick's looks to marry the advantages of wet and dry lubes with its all condition formula. It's a bit lighter than many wet lubes, so it soaks into the chain quickly and doesn't become claggy or collect dirt. doesn't wash off in the rain, but is still easy to clean your chain. It's also biodegradable and comes in a bottle made from recycled plastic, so its environmental credentials are first rate too. We tested the lube in a range of weather conditions. We were impressed with how little dirt the lube picked up. Even after a gravel ride, it also handled the rain well during both the simulated garden hose test and out in the real world, leaving our chain rust-free and running smoothly even after 100 winter miles. So on that one, not really too much of an idea. I haven't really seen, heard, or know too much about Fenwick's at all. So if you've used this product, please let me know, and also let me know if you think it's something that, or another product I should add to the long list, just bearing in mind it is a long test list that we're trying to work through. As for their comments, I mean, this is where it would be great to have some, for instance, wear checking by them. It sounds like they've tested this on gravel. They've tested it in wet conditions as well. So it sounds like there's potentially a fair bit of variance in how one lubricant may have been assessed versus another. If all lubricants aren't being assessed through pretty much the same type of riding, then it is hard to do a direct comparison on one's performance based on things as, I guess, subjective as look and feel, there's no objective data being gathered there. It's just really difficult to gauge how accurate their assessment is. And this is where even just some rudimentary chain wear checking from them would have been great, because if they'd done that riding and they found that there was zero wear to the chain, that could be quite impressive. If they find that there was already some notable wear to the chain and they've clocked up, sort of less than 500 miles or around 500 miles, that could be cause for concern, even with some sort of conditions taken into account. Yeah, so to me, this one really just circles back to the way that they're assessing the lubricant. There's a kind of like it feels like a lubricant still. It hasn't washed off easily and still feels like something's there, but they don't know how abrasive that has become. It just overall seems to be going well, but we just don't know. It could be eating through the chain rapidly, or it could be protecting the chain from wear in harsh conditions brilliantly. And that's really where I'd like some of the media to start to get to. I have absolutely no doubt that if, for instance, they had Ultegra 11-speed equipped bikes for road, and they had Ultegra or GRX 800 with an Ultegra chain on for gravel, and we're doing the same kind of ride testing for lubricant assessment, but adding wear rate checking at the end of that, I guarantee they are going to get some very interesting data to go with their assessment. They will absolutely find some lubricants showing really low wear, and some lubricants that they're probably going to write some excellent reviews about because they felt smooth, ran smooth, but returned at really high wear rates, and that really tells them all they need to know about the actual lubricant performance, lubricating the chain as opposed to being a liquid sandpaper masquerading as their chain lubricant. So I wonder which media is going to be the first to start to include chain wear checking as part of their assessment for best lubricant, because to me it's really overdue that this has started to be done. Okay, most durable, Muc-Off wet lube. Reasons to buy: long lasting even in bad weather, biodegradable, easy to apply, competitively priced. Reasons to avoid: chain turns dirty after a while. That is something of a theme with Muc-Off. Muc-Off's wet lube formula contains no harmful acids, CFCs, or solvents, as well as being biodegradable. It features the company's integral extreme pressure additives coat for increased efficiency in the drivetrain. On test, the lube kept our chain quiet and smooth, although it did attract a bit of dirt and grime. In wet conditions, both real and simulated, the chain remained rust-free. It's also long-lasting. We'd say that you should be able to ride 100 miles plus between applications. Muc-Off. So, I haven't tested this one, so I can't necessarily tar all Muc-Off products with, the brush from the Muc-Off products that I have tested. But there is a theme of concern around the Muc-Off lubricants that we've tested. So first I tested their 3 top lubricants. Initially it was the Muc-Off Team Sky Hydrodynamic, the Muc-Off Nano, which was like $100 for a 50ml bottle, and then the Muc-Off Ludicrous AF, which was like $90 for a 50ml bottle. All 3 of those were frankly horrendous, and a very common theme amongst them was that they became extremely dirty extremely quickly. They are some of the, especially those 3, are like up there with the dirtiest lubricants that you can run. If you find a lubricant that becomes just more like a black dirty sludge that just feels gritty as heck when you handle the chain, you've done a pretty good job to hunt something down that's going to take it to them. Their Muc-Off C3 Dry, which is obviously a more budget product by Muc-Off, is by far the best Muc-Off product that I've tested. But it was still a long way from competitive. It still becomes dirty, and it's also a long way from being actually what you would call dry. It's less of a wet, sludge nightmare of the wet lubricants of Muc-Offs that I've tested, but less wet is also very far from dry versus actually dry lubricants. So it's kind of not very accurate. So not having actually tested this one, I can't say, but the fact that there's talking about it getting dirty is a bit of an issue, or a concern, I should say. I am worried that it will test somewhere in the ballpark of the other Muc-Off wet lubricants, and that's a ballpark we don't want to be anywhere near. It does not matter what extreme pressure film or additives they've got in there. If a lubricant attracts a lot of abrasive contamination, the pressures inside the chain are thousands of psi from your pedaling load and very small part size. Abrasive particles are going to get pressed through whatever is in there, whether it's a film or a solid wax. It doesn't matter. If the contamination's inside the chain and part of the lubricant in there, it is getting pressed through to abrade on the chain metal. So it's, as always, the key is for the lubricant to not attract contamination to begin with, and then whatever may get on the outside, for it to not transport it inside. Wet lubricants, unfortunately, do both of those things really quite readily, which is why they have a tough time competing against the top waxes. So, again, I would have loved to see some wear rates, because based on the wear rates we've seen from testing the Muc-Off lubricants, I feel confident they would have seen something fairly startling, but obviously I can't say for sure. Maybe that product is really quite good, but let's just say I'm skeptical, and this is where the lack of anything objective in the assessment kind of hinders what we can take from it. And also, if it's 100 miles in the wet, then sure, that's long-lasting. If they haven't stated that, though, they've just sort of classed it as long-lasting because they're getting over 100 miles. I personally don't class, say, about 160 kilometers or anything around 200 kilometers as a long-lasting lubricant. That's really on the short side of treatment lifespans. A lot of lubricants are having no trouble doing 300-400 kilometers these days on a treatment, and really under that we're starting to class them as a relatively short lifespan lubricant. So not really on board with them on that one. Best lube for dry and dusty conditions. Finish Line Teflon Plus Dry Lube. Reasons to buy: sheds dirt efficiently. Okay, we're going to circle back to that. Good value for money, long lasting in dry conditions. Reasons to avoid: contains Teflon, which isn't biodegradable. Reason to avoid, and also wide bottle opening means you can easily apply too much lube. Finish Line's dry lube is very effective at repelling dirt, making it a good choice for dry and dusty riding. Teflon is used in this dry lube to reduce friction and mechanical wear, as it penetrates all the nooks and crannies for complete protection. The downside to Teflon is that it's harmful to the environment, even though it's used here in very small doses. In dry conditions, the lube worked well. Our chain stayed very clean, with the Teflon seeming to work just as well as it does in frying pans. How have they assessed that? Finish Line says that the 60ml bottle should be good for around 100 miles. 60 mils for 100 miles? Okay, they lost me a little bit there. You should not be going through 60 mil in 100 miles. Maybe they meant 1,000. Let's say 1,000, but even that is not very long, really. We'd say this seems pretty accurate, though if used in wet conditions, it will last less than this. All right, I'm starting to lose a bit of faith here. So there's a bit there. I won't rabble on too long, but they cannot tell about the Teflon. If they were to be supplied finish line dry with no Teflon additive, or finish line dry with the Teflon additive, I would bet my house they could not possibly tell which one was which in a blind test. I would be surprised if it could be detected in a control test, because we have no idea what potentially token amount or not of Teflon is included and how much benefit that is making to anything. What is going to be making the difference, especially if there's any contamination involved, is how much of that is sticking to the lubricant and how much is obviously being transported in. Despite the name, Finish Line Dry is not at all a dry lubricant. It may be less wet than some very wet lubricants, but I was super surprised at how much of a wet lubricant this dry lubricant is. And in Finish Line's own marketing on the video for Finish Line, they actually state that it's got a two-stage thing. It's got oils, and then it's got the dry component, and the dry component takes over when the oils start to give out. I've never seen a dry lubricant yet marketed as having an oil lubricant phase. So, yeah, a lot of what they have stated in that review there is just, I think, a flat-out rehash of marketing and what their mind is telling them is going on from the marketing. It is interesting that they are using the one that still has Teflon, because Finish Line have actually updated this product. I'm not entirely sure when, but it was at least, I would say, a year ago that I was aware of it, so sometime before that. It now contains ceramic, so boron nitride, or BN. Again, we at this stage have no evidence to support that additive helps or hinders in any way, but at least they've moved on from Teflon, which is less great from an environmental perspective. I think they probably should be testing the newer formula with the BN additive as opposed to the old formula with Teflon. Prior to this being updated with boron nitride, honestly, I would be surprised if this lubricant has seen any development since about 1988. And it's just typically unusual. Like in 1988, this might have been hot fuzz, but not many products, if they aren't improved in 3 decades, remain competitive with the latest and greatest stuff that you can get. In the zero friction cycling control test, like, it wasn't terrible, but it was a long way from competitive, not counting immersive waxes and looking at this whole repelling dirt and grime aspect, which it does not. It is wet. It attracted the dry contamination just as readily as other wet lubricants. So I have no idea how they have assessed it as repelling grime or dust. So not counting immersive waxes, it's in 25th place. So out of a total of 50 lubricants tested. So, not amazing. Certainly, again, not the worst, but certainly not in line with what they have typed out there. Next, lube for gravel. PT's Link Lube All Weather. So again, I have not seen, heard, or tested this one. So, I've seen and heard of it. I've not seen it or heard of it in use as such. So no one I know has sort of come up and say, hey, I'm on this lubricant and look how it's going. So, yep, no idea on this one. But initial thoughts, why best lube for gravel? So I'm going to be interested as to why this would, for instance, rank above something like Smooth, which has very obviously very high dust protection because it's a top wax strip. And this is not a wax, it's an oil, which is going to attract more. So, and all up, so things that seem to contradict. Reasons to buy: very little sticks to the chain. Reasons to avoid: will make your chain look dirty. They just don't compute to me as being, that's not a compatible set of attributes that they've put here. Long-lasting and durable as reason to buy. Can be used all year round. Smells minty fresh. Can be reapplied without having cleaned the chain. Most people do reapply without cleaning the chain every time, so that one's a little odd. Very quiet. And yeah, reasons to avoid, more expensive than Muc-Off or Fenwick's. I've been using Petey's Link Lube all weather for at least 3 years, and really I can't fault it. Its unique formula, which requires shaking before use, blends a clear part which has the water dispersant, anti-corrosive and penetration fluid, and the blue part which contains a mix of oils and waxes that get deep into your chain rollers and keep them running smoothly. Petey's Link Lube is branded as lube that cleans, and it is designed to push dirt, muck and grime from your chain links. I'm just going to pause on that one again. Like, this is where the clean and the lubes thing, if it's pushing dirt, muck and grime, and often the mental map is that it's cleaning that out of the chain, it has to have attracted it and transported it inside your chain for it to then move it back out. So it's always a very contradictory claim. The idea is you don't want that getting in there to start with. I could comment on this, on if this was true, but even after a deep clean, the chain goes black and looks dirty after use. So, yep. I have no issues with this, as my chains all run smoothly, quietly, and rarely do they get so they seem to attract any additional dirt. I would say the limits of Link Lube stop at the extremes. So if it is particularly dry or dusty, or you are bog snorkeling, it lacks the durability a dedicated wet or dry lube will have in those conditions. While Link Lube All Weather is more expensive than Muc-Off and Fenwick's options, I find the applicator bottle much easier to use. It doesn't leak and it allows for much more control. With Petey's now offering a large 360ml refill pouches, making the bottle reusable as well. I don't know. Without testing, I don't know. Maybe it's amazing, maybe it's meh. Thing is, I don't think they know either. I think, again, it just feels like it's a lubricant. I doubt in a blind test that they could tell it apart from probably 500 other products that are a lubricant. And without any wear rate tracking or anything objective, what we've really got from that one is overall some fairly self-contradictory parts in that summary, in my opinion. Best lube for road cycling, Squirt. Again, Squirt is overall a great choice for many. I'm just wondering why best for road. Best use, dry and dusty conditions. That to me is more for, say, gravel, mountain bike, sort of dry off-road as opposed to road. Maybe there's something at the end, but how have they decided which one is best for the category? Like, what metrics have they used to assign best in class? I am struggling as to what's deciding what at this time. Reasons to buy: lower drivetrain resistance, last longer than many oil-based lubes, no build up of black grime. That is not true. Reasons to avoid: washes off easily. That's also not really true as long as it's set. Avoid: chain plates can still rust, which they can for many wax strips, and requires chain prep before application. That's the same, in my opinion, for every lubricant. So that's not a reason to avoid. Squirt's chain lube is a wax and water-based lubricant that is noticeably drier and cleaner than most oil-based options. Ideally, it should be applied to a sparkling clean chain and then left for a while to penetrate fully before use. So no last-minute applications before diving out the door on a Sunday morning. But I mean, that's the same for Smooth, which they didn't include that detail. So interesting. When conditions are reasonably dry, then it lasts very well, and I have used it without issue on road, gravel and mountain bike drivetrains, but I confess that my chains do get very regularly cleaned. If you prefer to layer on lube after lube without recourse to a brush and cleaner, then perhaps look elsewhere. As it isn't as sticky as oil lubes, dust doesn't get attracted to it, which has to help the chain and cassette longevity, but very wet or gritty conditions can strip it off fairly quickly. If I know I'm going in for a long day in the saddle, or multiple days back to back, then I will use something heavier, but for everything else, I like Squirt a lot. I'm going to keep this zooming on a bit quicker as we're going through now and getting the feel for things, but Yeah, I mean it has always been known as quite a fast lubricant, so that it sort of hit the highlights in the early days of Friction Facts testing, as it was the fastest drip lubricant at the time tested. It was the sort of next one in line after Molten Speed Wax. But yeah, I am struggling on a couple of bits there because a number of what they've said just really applies to all lubricants, and overall Squirt is generally known as quite a long-lasting option. The wax base that they use, it's believed to be slack wax, which is a relatively oily wax, which is why it does go quite black. But that oily type wax is quite long-lasting. It does hang on pretty well. And as I mentioned before, as long as you apply a wax drip and allow the carrier, which is typically water, to evaporate and the wax set, then they will be quite long lasting. If you apply it and head out onto a wet ride, then yes, it will get quickly washed off. I'm not sure how they've assessed it as being sort of not very long lasting in wet conditions, so I'd need a bit more information there. But yeah, overall, again, this one just seems like it's a little bit of a miss, just from my knowledge and experience on this product. And also it's a popular product for a long time globally, so there's a lot of user feedback on this one, and typically the main reason why people move away from Squirt is just sort of getting a bit of a gunky build up over time. They're looking for something cleaner. I've not heard someone going away from Squirt because they found that it didn't last long enough in general, even in wet riding and things like that. So yeah, this one's not lining up to me to reality, in my opinion. And of course, say here, isn't as sticky as oil lubes, dust doesn't get attracted to it, which can help. So why have they put it in the best for road? Why not best for your gravel and your dry off-road? I don't get it. Zooming on, best for quiet drivetrain, Silka Synergetic Wet Lube. Keeps drivetrain quiet, long-lasting, highly water-resistant, reason to avoid, expensive. Promising reduced friction and reduced component wear, Silka's Synergetic Wet Lube also quietens down the drivetrain for a silent ride. The oil-based lube is highly water-resistant even when fully submerged. It can be used in any conditions but really shines in winter filth, protecting the drivetrain and offsetting some of its high initial cost. So hey, we've got a really good one. So yeah, Synergetic is, I believe, overall, let me double check. Just check the data table. Yeah, it's still the lowest wear wet drip lubricant tested. Closely on its heels is Rex Black Diamond, followed by Rex Domestique. So this truly is one of the ones where the extra cost will for sure pay itself back many times over in lower wear. 60 ml, because it is very long lasting per treatment, that bottle will last you for ages. I think Silka claimed 10,000 kilometers from a bottle. You will generally at least get that for most people, especially if you're not having to reapply that frequently because you're not riding in the wet. So just normal dry riding, you're going a long, long time. Obviously post-wet rides, for everything you should be cleaning and reapplying. So they've got it bang on this one. It's pretty short summary compared to the others. So did they test this one or not test this one? Why isn't this one the best for road? I don't know. Why wouldn't you have something like, say, Smooth and or Squirt, which are top wax drips, and therefore going to, by their nature, have a greater resistance to being contaminated by dirt and dust as your best off-road or gravel, and a top wet lubricant as your best for road? I am struggling with the sort of category winners. And also, just on the drivetrain quiet part, the Synergetic, because it's aimed to be quite a fast wet lube as well, it really is faster wet lube as they could make. It's made to be as light as they could get away with without being flung off the chain at sort of higher cadences. So it is actually on the lighter side of things and therefore less dampening than quite a lot of other wet lubricants that you can get, and even a lot of other wet lubricants that I've seen through testing. So this is actually quite a fair bit less dampening than other wet lubricants that you can buy that are a fair bit heavier. So, like, as long as your drivetrain is normal, for sure, it will keep it quiet. It's a great oil lubricant, and a great oil lubricant is going to have things running silent and smooth. But, there's other stuff out there that will really dampen things down, such as the detail review product I did last week on Aerolube, like that. Holy Batman, does that dampen things. So, yeah, anyway, I feel like they're just reaching for things to type a little bit, maybe. Best for cleaning and protecting. Oh, no. Wolftooth WT1 all conditions chain lube. All right, here we go. Can be used on dirty chains. Quick to apply, cleans and lubricates. It does not. Can be used elsewhere to lubricate. I mean, so can anything if you go on there. Reasons to avoid: small bottle. A versatile multi-purpose lubricant. WT1 can be used on pulley wheels and cables as well as the chain. So can any oil lube that we've seen. Wolftooth says that the lube can be used on dirty chains and will actually clean them up by pushing dirt out from the rollers, and calls it a drivetrain treatment. And that claim I can say with a huge amount of confidence. I'll say in my opinion so that an American company doesn't sue me, but with a lot of confidence in my opinion, that is an absolutely massively false claim. It is suitable for use in wet and dry conditions, so is a good all-in-one solution for riders who aren't too fastidious about looking after their chain. All right, I've had a mini rant on this product before, and I'm going to have another mini rant on this product and its claims again. But just quickly, how have they assessed that? I think they have just obviously retyped the marketing. And look, that's fine. Just say that you're retyping the marketing, though. It's not a review if you just pump out the marketing claims for them without any actual assessment to that, and then your opinion based on something, some type of objective assessment. So just rehashing what's on their website or what the rep told you or what's on the bottle, that is not a review. That's just a free advertisement. The clean as it lubes is just such utter BS. So, I mean, testing this one on its own, so this one has been control tested, and as soon as it was exposed to the dry contamination in Block 2, it completely went to crap. It is a very wet lubricant, so it attracts dust and contamination extremely readily, and because it's wet, it's transporting that from outside to inside as the lubricant is pumped around, as that's what happens when you ride a wet lubricant. And so again, if it's cleaning shite out from inside the chain, and it's the shite that it itself attracted to put in there, and it's going to cause wear. I don't get it. And also the claims for this product with the cleaning agent and this chain treatment that it gives it. In their own marketing, they claim that the product is 95% lubricant. So that means there is a maximum of this product that can be 5% cleaning agent. So if you're putting, say, a 3 mil application on this, let me get my calculator back. Hang on. 3 mil, of which is a fairly typical amount that you would apply to your chain on a relube, times by 0.05 for 5%. That means we have 0.15 of a mil that is going onto your chain that is some cleaning agent. That 0.15 of a mil, your chain is going to be over 100 links long, so we divide that by 100. We have 0.0015 of a mil of some cleaning agent that is supposedly giving you a chain treatment when you relube or use this product. That, unfortunately, again, in my opinion, is just such utter marketing BS of just it's up there with the highest levels of marketing BS that we've seen. It's not as bad as Presticycle's bearing cream that's a bearing grease and a degreaser at the same time, but it's up there. So there's that. Let me just double check the data. Okay, it is, in dry contamination block 2, it is in 40th place, having worn through over half of the chain's wear allowance in just that one test block. And for the end of block 5 main test, it is in 39th place out of 50 lubes. So, I mean, it's poor, like really, really poor, because the lubricants below it are horrendous. They're the worst 10 lubricants that we've ever seen, and their wear rates are horrific. So would you believe that a really wet lubricant that attracts a huge amount of dirt and grime and transports that in your chain to be a nice abrasive paste, whatever the 0.0015 of a mil per link of cleaning agent you have in there is unsurprisingly not able to deal with that real well? Yeah, so I'm losing faith in a media publication best chain lube review if all they're going on is the marketing spiel from the lubricant manufacturer. Yeah, and I'm sorry that, like, because this stuff, this is where it shits me, because Cycling Weekly, people are, I guess, they're placing some tacit trust in you when they're reading this article and making a decision based on what might be a great lubricant for them to run. If all you're doing is rehashing the marketing without doing some objective testing to know that what you're typing, that you believe in your own heart of hearts is the truth about that product, and that you're putting forward good information and a good recommendation to your readers. Like for me, if I, on my good mountain bike with a $260 T-Type XX SL chain and an $1,100 XX SL cassette, if I ran that product out in my world of dirt and dust mountain biking, the lifespan out of those components and the cost that I'm going to have to bear in not too far down the track riding with that lubricant versus anything from the top 20, it's going to be multiple times, greater wear and greater cost. How many times more do I want to spend, say, $1,300 plus on a new chain and cassette versus not spending that and having that money to spend on other cool stuff? It shits me. All right, and I can't see a deeper review for this one either, that they've maybe actually tested it. It really does just look like a complete, they've retyped out the marketing claims by Wolftooth, which are, as best as I know, completely unsubstantiated, don't make any logical sense, and are certainly not what bore out in the ZFC control test. And considering how much I like Wolftooth as a company overall, I really wished for a good result for this product. It's just really bad. I'm not going to go on any further. I think this is, far enough. Like, I've lost faith now that this is a accurate, objective lube recommendation article. Aside from, say, that one, we have a number where we really have some contradictory points being raised in the sort of reasons to buy and reasons to avoid, as well as I cannot ascertain at all what is being decided for what category. They're putting some okay from what I sort of had a quick read before, just general information. So that's fine, but I'd like to have a chat if David Motton, who is the guy here, seems to be the tech writer. Love to have a chat with him if he's not too annoyed with me, just to get more information on the testing and how he's arrived at some of these points and categories and and performance ratings, because I think there's a lot of room for improvement. Or maybe I just need more understanding on what he's done, and who knows, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I'm obviously biased because I'm me, but I don't think so. All right, so I feel a bit sad that it's kind of wrapping up there, and again, not to be, I guess, harsh, because this is just such a tough product category to do reviews on and assess. But that's where, unfortunately, unless things get better in how these products are assessed, we're going to be going around in this circle time and time again, and we're going to end up in a place where we're going through a Best Lube article, which seemingly has a huge amount of time and effort done for the testing, it seems, for a number of the products at least. and then same for putting the article together, with the goal of which I am certain both David and Cycling Weekly want all that effort and information to be of benefit to their audience. I'm sure they don't want their audience to go out and buy a product that ends up being really high wear for their riding, eat through their drivetrain in short order, and cost their audience members a whole bunch of money that they could have avoided burning through. So if you're going to do that, to me, things just have to get better. We can't be ending up in a situation where for wet lubes, we're typing out stuff like you can see it repelling in the dirt, dust and grime, and you're believing in a product that's got some token amount of cleaning agent in it, that it's cleaning as it lubricates and is doing a chain treatment, whilst at the same time it's obviously attracting a whole lot of abrasive contamination, which is the problem. Putting something like say finish line dry, which is really not dry at all, and is obviously going to attract a lot more dust than something like a top wax strip such as Smooth or Squirt, and yet that is the one that's recommended as the top pick for dusty riding conditions. Like, we shouldn't be ending up with these kind of, I guess, me having conjecture and issue with that, in these articles. If there was more objectiveness brought into these into the testing, I think we would avoid ending up with me ranting and rambling on like this when I do these reviews of media articles on best lubricant. So yeah, not easy, but I think it really is time that they started doing some, because I mean, you can't just say, for instance, go out and ride even the same or a bunch of gravel rides, because not all gravel dust is going to be the same even on the same day. Was it a windy day? Was it a still day? What is making up the dust from that gravel or mountain bike ride? Is it soft soil, or is it crushed rock? How long was that ride? How much average power were you doing that ride? All these things are going to greatly impact the lubricant's performance and its wear rate performance on the chain. But what tech riders who were really motivated to do a great job in their assessment could be doing are things like, say, let's have at least five road loops of varying lengths, and they do some of them, or sometimes they're done just as is, dry road conditions. Other times, though, rather than wait for, say, a wet day, because again, not every wet ride is going to be the same, take a bit of control of the contamination situation yourself. So sometimes use like a cake icing nozzle to put on 5 grams of sandy loam from a 20 kilogram bag you bought from the hardware store. You can pedal that on in the stand and then go out and do your ride. Another time you could put like a bidon of water through the chain and then also put the contamination on after that, and then go out and do the ride. Try to average the same power or as close to on each of these test assessment rides, and accurate chain wear checking at the end of, say, 1,000 kilometers of testing for that chain and lubricant. So there are certainly things that they can do. It won't be as accurate as what we're doing here, but they can certainly bridge the gap a long way between what they're doing at the moment and what's being done here, and be vastly more accurate in their best chain lube articles and recommendations versus just look and feel and potentially occasionally just rehashing marketing, or at the very least potentially being heavily influenced by what the marketing is telling them that this stuff is doing. All right, better wrap it up there. Oh my God, I just noticed it's almost an hour. Sorry about that. Again, I may or may not be back next week, because next week I have so much running around for mini-me fun stuff that my work time's going to be severely dented. But yeah, I'll try if I can. I might be back with the final one at the moment of the bike fleet testing, or I might be having a look at another media best article and see if they are doing better than what unfortunately this one ended up doing. All right, have a great weekend, and yeah, look forward to your input and comments, and hopefully catch you again next week, but no promises.